Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour. My name is Steve Mathis. You can find me, as always, on Twitter at Judge Mathis, joined by my co-host Dave Tilton. You can find him on Twitter at Tilt Money. Together, we are the Bills guys, and this show is presented by the Cover One Sports Network. And before we get started today, Dave, some great comments already. You know, we had like 25 people in the waiting room, which we thought was awesome. We got 44 already eyeballs on this thing. Share if you can. Let's get everyone in here, have a nice little pregame party before we watch this early game, Rams Buccaneers. But Mike Edwards coming in saying, feeling confident. The boys are on a mission. Go Bills. I really like that comment because we're going to get into this on the show. I think this team is battle tested. And I really do think that there is more of a laser focus this year than there was last year heading into this Chiefs playoff game. And Father Snowman always coming in. Listen, you're every Bills fan right now. Very anxious, but we can do this. So I love Father Snowman coming in and essentially pretty much just stating how I think almost every single Buffalo Bills fan feels right now. What's your confidence level heading into this game?
I mean, look, we were all anxious. I think you were lying to yourself if you weren't anxious last week, even though we did feel like we really were the better team and we just had to take care of business. The anxiety level is ratcheted up a notch even more so this week. A lot of people look at these two teams and say, in another path in the playoffs, this is likely the two best teams and would have been a great rematch of an AFC Championship game, but we get it in the divisional round this year. So my anxiety level is very high. I think there are many narratives that each side, whether you're on the Chiefs side or the Bills side, that you can play into this game to kind of put the, to put the underdog sort of view or lens on your side. And I am confident, but I also know that Chiefs fans and their team's confident too, and they're playing at home. So look, at the end of the day, we know how we left the field last year in that AFC Championship game. It's all culminated to this point, albeit not the AFC Championship game, but culminated to this point. We see this foe again in the playoffs. This is the fourth time we're playing this team now in the last two seasons, if you include playoffs. And it is, I mean, it feels like almost even more important than the AFC Championship game to me because these two teams are very familiar with each other, and both of these teams have reasons to believe that they've been slighted going into this game.
Yeah, 100%. And Nick Prosciutti coming in with a great comment. He says, question, would you rather watch this game alone or would you rather watch it with friends? I'm torn. This is an issue that I'm having right now in my household. So my father's in town. He's visiting. He's in town for the next 2 weeks. And, I said to him yesterday, I'm like, hey, let's go to the Bills Backers bar. It's about 20 minutes up the road. Let's just enjoy this game surrounded by Bills fans. We'll do the pregame show before the 1 o'clock game. We'll leave at halftime of the early game. It's a 1 o'clock game here. It's probably like a 2:30 or something there. But I was like, we'll leave at halftime, of that first game, and we'll go and we'll enjoy it surrounded by a bunch of Bills fans. And then today, we were driving around doing errands this morning. And my dad was like, I don't know if I want to be surrounded by people today. Like, I don't know. Like, and I personally prefer to watch games alone. I was kind of offered it up to him because I wanted to enjoy the game with him. And I was like, thank God you said that because I really didn't.
Well,
it's nothing against the Wild West Bills backers. I love that place. I love those people. Laura does a great job with the Bills Mafia babes. They do a great job over there. But, John does a great job. But it's just like I need to be alone during Bills games. It's just my own personal faux pas.
I'm with you. And this is what scares me about the circle of friends I'm in is because we've always said, if in our circle of friends, if your team is in the Super Bowl, you are the host of the Super Bowl party. And it puts a lot of pressure on that person. I was my best friend's a Broncos fan. You remember that game against Seattle where Seattle just toasted them in MetLife Stadium. And it was like very, very awkward and really painful to watch that game with him. So I definitely prefer to watch alone. I'll be at home with my wife. We're going to be watching it. She's obviously not feeling too great after the way things ended last night with the Packers. Yeah. But my Bills-Packers prediction for Super Bowl is out the window, but the Bills can still do their part to get there. Randy here says
Bills-Rams still alive.
Bills-Rams still alive, cautious and confident. I feel like this game is a definition of a coin flip, and that's pretty much true, right?
It really is.
We're like people have been spending all week breaking down this game, trying to find little pieces of information, pieces of data here and there that kind of give one edge to the Bills or one edge to the Chiefs. And we're going to talk about those things because you have to slice this to the
it come
narrowest margin.
it literally comes down to whoever executes better. And if both teams execute really well, whatever team makes like one splash play at the opportune time. Like that's literally what this game comes down to.
And you may notice I'm wearing the McDermott shirt today. And there's a reason for that is because we know McDermott faced a lot of criticism in that AFC Championship game last year with how he coached that game against the Chiefs. That was pretty much a 180 versus how he coached last week against the Pats. So in all this talk about Allen and Mahomes, Bills and the Chiefs, maybe we haven't talked enough yet about the McDermott factor in which in-game Sean McDermott are we going to see today? And that's why I'm wearing the shirt, because I need last week's in-game Sean McDermott to show up today and be confident in what he's got on the field.
Yeah, and we're going to get to that in a second too. Spin 0481 comes in and says, Judge become French overnight. I think it was my use of the word faux pas. I really hope I used it correctly, because as I was talking, I was like, how do I end this sentence? And I just used the word faux pas because I hear it a lot. So hopefully I used it correctly.
It just means I
took like 7 years of took 7 years of French. Can't speak a lick of French. Can't speak a lick.
It basically means like something you're like not supposed to do, essentially.
To this day, my dad was like, "Why why didn't you take Spanish? Why didn't you take Spanish?" And I was like, "Oh, because all the hot girls were taking French. That's why."
Well, you also didn't know you were going to be living in Phoenix, probably.
But speaking of the Sean McDermott, one of the things in my notes here towards the end, but we can start with it, is special teams. And I think both teams are set at kicker. I know Tyler Bass had a couple issues last week. I think that more had to do with a frozen football than anything. I'm not too worried about Tyler Bass. Obviously, on the other side, Harrison Butker is a good kicker. I think Micah Hyde has shored up the punt return game. I'm not too worried about him back there fielding punts. It's all about the punting. We saw last night in that Green Bay matchup how important special teams can be. They had a blocked field goal. Then they had a blocked punt.
Yep.
If you're the Buffalo Bills, obviously you want to keep this trend going of keeping Matt Haack off of the football field. And to me, this goes to your Sean McDermott point. I want to see an aggressive Sean McDermott today on fourth downs. I want to see an aggressive Sean McDermott today past midfield, mostly to keep keep Matt Haack off the football field unless he's holding for field goals or extra points, but also because in this type of game, Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes, field goals ain't going to do you shit. It's touchdowns, right? You want 7, not 3. What are your thoughts about that and how punting sort of plays into this as well?
And that's why I'm not really too worried about Tyler Bass either, right? I mean, remember last year he missed the extra point on that touchdown the Bills got early in the game. It ended up not mattering at all in the grand scheme of things. And the field goals didn't matter either. Now, the only time I think a field goal like that may matter is if it's like 35-35 at the end of the game and you need a field goal to win the game, sure. But throughout the course of the game, likely an individual field goal is not going to be the difference, right? As far as like the game flow. Punting, on the other hand, could be, because on both sides, I don't know that we expect there to be a ton of punting, right? The Bills defense has been awesome. And likewise, the Bills offense has been awesome in keeping their own punter off the field. I would think if you're either team, you're basically like a punt. Anytime we punt, that's a loss for us, right? Unless it's like you're buried in your own zone, right? And like you're inside, you're like your own 40, or maybe even on your own side of the field if it's a certain over a certain distance on fourth down. But anytime you're across midfield, it's going to be really hard if it's like a short yardage situation, like 4, 5, even 5 yards or less, to not go for it if you're Sean McDermott, because it didn't like his play of trying to kind of go with that mindset in last year's game didn't work. Now, I know it's a different year, but you also have to know that in the back of your mind, field goals, like you said, aren't going to win you games. Are you really confident that Matt Haack's even going to be able to pin the Chiefs deep in those situations? I'm not, right? I'm not confident in that, really. So your best players on the field are your quarterback, right? And Stephon Diggs in those situations. So I'm all about that. I think that's the mindset you have to have. You have to be super aggressive in this game. We've seen that that's the way to beat the Chiefs, is being super aggressive on both offense and getting to Pat Mahomes. We'll get to that later. But I'm with you. I think this has to be one of those games where we look back at the end of the game, win or lose, and say we were fine with the decisions McDermott made as far as him going for it on fourth downs. And if we can say that, then there will be fewer question marks, I would say, at the outcome, win or lose.
Yeah, a couple super chats here that we're going to get to. Number one is Silas Whittle. Thank you as always, Silas. He says, if not now, when? Buffalo runs 7-9 D linemen, 9 people caught passes last week. KC runs dime 40% of the time and are bad against the run and QB designed run. We're taking care of the ball. KC doesn't. So he's feeling confident. And I agree with you. If not now, when? Like, how many times can you lose to the Chiefs in the playoffs before you have to consider making some kind of significant change? Probably wouldn't be after this year, but if it happens again next year, etc., like we start to talk about having to make some kind of not just minor change or adjustment here or there, but making a wholesale or significant change, because you don't want to end up like the Green Bay Packers have, right? Like Aaron Rodgers, they're talking about how the San Francisco 49ers have had his number in the last
2 of the last 3 years in the playoffs, they've beaten the Packers.
Yeah. So you got to start talking about, wholesale changes and different things, obviously not QB1, but you're going to start thinking about ways in which you maybe change the way you construct your football team. So hopefully that's not the issue. And hopefully that's not something we're talking about after this football game today. And you sound pretty confident, and we're pretty confident that hopefully we won't be. Michael K comes in and says, I feel like a V pill with a face. Josh Allen circa 2013. Yeah, that was a funny tweet to get dug up. Whoever dug up that tweet, they were a week late, though. They were a week late with that with that tweet. And Greg comes in and says, leave everything on the field. And I agree. And I think this is the kind of football team that's going to leave everything on the field tonight. I don't think you're going to see them sort of lay that dud like you saw them lay in the AFC Championship game last year after they got off to that hot start. And I don't think this is a football team that's constructed. Our biggest gripe last year after the AFC Championship game was the Chiefs were bringing everything they had between the whistles. And it seems like the only real toughness the Buffalo Bills had last year was after the whistle. I don't think that that's going to be a concern today. I think that even win or lose, I think that this is a football team that between the whistles is going to, have a thoroughly good, efficient performance, and they're going to do what they have to do. It could end up where that's just not enough because, like I said, one bad drive compared to one good Chiefs drive, one bad turnover, one big play here or the other could sway the way. Like it's a 50-50 ball game. But I just don't think you're going to see a runaway football game where the Kansas City Chiefs take it to us like they did in that AFC Championship game last year once we got off to that 9-0 lead. I don't think you're going to see a repeat of that.
I wouldn't expect it. And I would also say that it's obviously a different animal in the playoffs, but the Bills, I think going into that game, it felt like at least the coaching staff and maybe even some of the players were intimidated being in that AFC Championship game. Like maybe the moment was a little too big for them. And that's a lesson learned, right? That's a lesson learned that you take away and you go into the next season. And we saw a Bills team that was not intimidated this year when they played the Chiefs week 5. Now I know that's the regular season, and I know it really doesn't matter because all really that matters is what happens today. But at least you cleared one hurdle, right? You cleared in the Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes era. You've at least proven that you can beat this team, regular season or postseason, regardless. So had the Bills lost in week 5, I think there would have still been this even larger mental hurdle and this sort of between the whistles sort of intimidation factor potentially. So although it's the playoffs, I know they did at least clear somewhat of a hurdle by beating this team in week 5.
Yeah, we got Joe Mannix coming in and saying this is the Super Bowl. And that's the other one of the things that I wanted to talk about was sort of the ramifications of this game. I don't want to sit here and talk about like, oh, the Buffalo Bills will be hosting an AFC. Like, I'm not that kind of confident person who wants to look ahead, but I do want to talk about the ramifications of this football game because a lot is on the line tonight. And this is a bigger game than it was before the Tennessee-Cincinnati game because the winner of this game hosts the AFC title game. And then if you look at the NFC, San Francisco has a really good defense, really good special teams, etc. But their quarterback is Jimmy Garoppolo, and how that hasn't come back to bite them in the ass.
They knocked out a heavyweight yesterday. I mean that's basically.
And it's Jimmy Garoppolo is going to catch up with them eventually because he's not good. He is really not good.
Kyle
And then
Shanahan is good, though. That's clear.
and
He is a
then
great coach.
you just look over at the other two teams that are playing in this afternoon game. I like LA. LA can be very disruptive, etc. But if they lose today to Tampa Bay, you're looking at a Tampa Bay team that's without Antonio Brown. They're without their right tackle. They're without Chris Godwin. They are down a number of people. Leonard Fournette. So that could be interesting as well. So a lot of people want to look past this Chief game and think about hosting the AFC title game and think about how the one seed, that dominant team in the NFC, is gone, and think that this game is for the Super Bowl. And there's an argument for that. But there's also an argument that whoever wins this football team could easily blow their load trying to win this football game today. Really,
Yep.
right? And like just emotionally drain themselves and physically drain themselves. And then KC can come in and do business and clean up against them next week. So if you're the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs, you got to make sure that you're obviously leaving it all on the football field this week. But to me, I don't think this game decides who wins the Super Bowl. I think this game decides who has the better team left in the playoffs. But I do think that there is an argument to be made that these guys could both knock each other around so bad this week that it could have an effect on next week's game.
I think there's some truth to that, but again, like, I guess if this game happened in the AFC Championship game, you'd have an extra week of rest, right? If you're going to the Super Bowl, stuff like that. I would say, maybe to play devil's advocate, look at it this way, right? We talk about having momentum going into the playoffs, and the Bills had that 4-game winning streak going into the playoffs, and you want to get hot at the right time so you can make that run to get to the Super Bowl. But what if we think about it in a way that we carve up the playoffs into halves, right? And you have kind of the first 2 games and the second 2 games. And is it possible that winning this game gives you a mini boost of momentum as well, like on top of what you already had going into the playoffs, to really propel you to the highest point, right? Beating the Chiefs in this situation may even give you that added confidence that you can go win the whole damn thing, right? Because right now you're playing the Chiefs in the divisional round. You've only played 1 playoff game to this point. And so there's something to be said perhaps about a mid-playoff momentum boost, right? By beating this team. And obviously every win in the playoffs gives you confidence, but beating this team in this round, I mean, that really could propel the Bills.
That's a really good counterpoint to the argument that I just made, that what you said, where this could actually be the reverse of that, where it is what pushes you over the top. All right. So to the game now, a lot of people want to look back at that week 5 game and talk about that week 5 game. And another one of the big talking points is that these two football teams are not the same. Buffalo Bills, after they won that football game, went to what, 5-1 or 4-1, something like that. They were looking pretty good after that football game. The Chiefs were reeling. And if you look at that football game, the Buffalo Bills were without Matt Milano. Harrison Phillips was a healthy scratch. Devin Singletary was an afterthought in the running back rotation. Zach Moss played a majority of that football game. And the offensive line for the Buffalo Bills was still finding its footing. Ryan Bates had not yet entered the lineup, and he wouldn't for still about 10 weeks.
Right.
And then you look over at the Chiefs side. Charvarius Ward, Chris Jones were both out with injuries that week. Melvin Ingram has since been added to boost that pass rush. You saw what Melvin Ingram did to the Buffalo Bills week 1. That defense under Steve Spagnuolo has sort of regrouped as they got on that winning streak late in the season. And I think one of the more not so much talked about things, because it's more recent, the last couple of weeks, it hasn't really, played out over a long stretch of time. I really do think the influx of Jerick McKinnon into that Kansas City offense has given them a little bit of life in the running game. Injuries have really torn apart that room this year. They've struggled to find consistency. And he's a really dynamic running back who has given them some different looks the last couple of weeks. So what do you think about the differences between these two football teams since they met week 5?
I mean, you could almost, in a way, throw that game out the window, other than some of the intangibles, I think, right? The mental intangibles of beating the Chiefs, that whole thing. But these teams are different, much like in 2020 when the Bills played the Chiefs in week 6 and we limped out of that game. Again, trying to keep everything in front of us and just letting Clyde Edwards-Helaire run all over us. Those teams that played in week 6 in 2020 were 2 completely different teams also that played in the AFC title game last year. Now the Bills didn't show up really in that game, but they were totally different teams as well. This year, both of these teams really kind of went through their ups and downs, right? After that game, after that Chiefs game, the Bills kind of, they lost to the Titans, we know, and then they came out of the bye week like not so hot, right? And then the Chiefs went through their ups and downs as well throughout the season, and they kind of started clicking then more towards the end. Outside of that Bengals game towards the end of the season, they come into the playoffs, winning 5 out of 6, 6 out of 7 games. So I think we really can't take much from that week 5 game. Personnel's different. The state of kind of the confidence of each team's different. The way the teams are playing is different. So I think what you really just take out of that game is knowing maybe schematically somewhat what the team's going to do, maybe some of the coaching tendencies, perhaps by watching some of the film from the last 3 times you've played. And that's really about it. I don't think you can go into this game thinking, oh, well, we beat them 38-20 in week 5. Like, let's just go out and do that again. Like it's not going to be like that. So you can almost throw it all out, I think.
All right, so let's get into it for today, and let's start talking about. We already touched a little bit on special teams, but let's talk about what does the Buffalo Bills offense need to do against this Kansas City defense. And I want to start with one of the popular talking points this week. Steve Spagnuolo, Andy Reid were both talking this week about shutting down Josh Allen in the running game and neutralizing him as a runner. They were working on tackling techniques, how you can work on a tackling technique to bring out down a guy who's 6'5", 240 pounds and runs 21 miles per hour. I don't know, but they were working on some kind of drill this week to do that. Is that a wise focus for the Kansas City Chiefs to try to shut down Josh Allen, the running back, knowing what he can do as a passer?
I don't think it's a terrible idea. I mean, the thing is with Josh Allen is like, I would say, based on what we've seen, a lot of the design runs that he has, he can break them for larger gains, but it seems like most of the design runs that we've seen from him are really more around picking up that 3 to 4 yards, 5 to 6 yards, right? Those third and shorts, that type of situation. His big runs really, to me, are on broken plays and on situations where he sees an opening and he makes a quick decision, right? He's climbing in the pocket, green grass in front of him. He decides, I'm going to take off. I don't know how much you can plan against that if you're the Chiefs, unless you really dedicate a spy on Josh Allen. And we've seen that even if someone has Josh Allen dead to rights in front of him, he's able to show a little wiggle, right? And make, some extra yards. So if you're the Chiefs, I mean, I don't disagree that that's an option for you. But I think the fact of the matter is that because the Bills have really shown a much more improved traditional running game on top of Josh Allen being able to run, that kind of doesn't scare me as much probably as it would have maybe earlier in the season where we didn't really have that traditional running game to lean on. So if the Chiefs want to take that, mindset and say, okay, we're going to try to take Josh Allen, the runner, away. Well, okay, that opens up the Bills passing game. Maybe the Bills can shift a little bit more to traditional run. If they spread them out. Eric comes in. I assume that's Eric saying McGee said last year speed, size, and physicality stood out. They added size and physicality on offense and defense, but I'm not sure they added speed on D. That worries me. And that has been probably the biggest thing people are afraid of going into this game. So we're talking about Josh Allen running the ball here and what the Chiefs are going to do. But on offense, I would agree.
And that sort of brings me to my next point is the Chiefs defense, heavy man-to-man team. They like to be aggressive. They like to get physical with you at the line of scrimmage. Last year, our receiving core, Stephon Diggs was dealing with that oblique injury. Cole Beasley was dealing with that foot injury fibula injury. Gabe Davis was dealing with that ankle injury. They neutralized our receivers and no one was getting open up against their man-to-man coverage. But typically, Josh Allen is a quarterback that eats against man-to-man coverage. So what are we going to see from the Kansas City Chiefs today? Are they going to try to go exclusively zone? Are they going to try to go some zone, but mix in some man-to-man? Or are they going to try to do what they do best and come at Josh Allen man-to-man defense with man-to-man defense with that physicality that they're known for at the line of scrimmage.
I mean, I would do that if I was them, only because I know Josh Allen's had success against man, right? And
Mm-hmm.
that's well documented. But guess what? It worked for them last year. They bullied our receivers. They got pressure on Josh Allen. It worked for them, right? So I think some of this comes into how is the game being officiated early on? Are the officials letting them play? Is there a lot of hand fighting that's going uncalled? Are the Chiefs defensive backs, getting away with some
Mm-hmm.
extra physicality maybe early in the game? If yes, then I wouldn't see why the Chiefs wouldn't continue with that type of game plan. If no, then I could see them maybe switching back to a more of a zone heavy scheme, trying to keep things in front of them, forcing the Bills to kind of dink and dunk down the field, make the Bills go on 10, 15 play drives to score, fine. But, I mean, what worked for the Chiefs against the Bucs in the Super Bowl, what worked for the Chiefs against the Bills last year, um, you know, that's what they're going to have to do. And so we saw how it went the other way in the Super Bowl, and we saw how it went against the Bills in the AFC title game. So I think a big factor here is how is this game being officiated early on? I think we need to pay attention to that.
And Ark Omen comes in and says, "Why can't Isaiah McKenzie be like our version of Tyreek Hill?" They're just different football players from a physical standpoint. You're not going to ask Isaiah McKenzie to run the ball 10 times a game because his body type can't take that kind of beating. You're not going to see Isaiah McKenzie lower his shoulder into players and get those extra yards after contact like you're going to see a Deebo Samuel. I remember there was a play where he ran a jet sweep and then just laid out a linebacker on a block.
Mhm.
You're not gonna see that from Isaiah McKenzie. Deebo Samuel, what, 6'2", 215
Yep.
pounds, whereas Isaiah McKenzie is 5'9", 165 pounds. And, as Aaron comes in and says, Isaiah McKenzie is really a one-trick pony, and that one trick is, I think his route running and everything has gotten better, but his trick is speed. The dude is fast.
Yep.
So when you're playing man-to-man defense, once he gets off the line of scrimmage, he can run past dudes. When he's playing in the slot, he can get open over the middle, or he can catch the football and run past guys on those crossers. And then you also see that straight line speed come into effect when he's utilized in the jet sweep game, and when you see him utilized in the running game, the different various ways that Brian Daboll has used him in the running game. So
And
he can be our Deebo Samuel in the sense that we utilize him to supplement the run game, but he's not going to be a majority of the run game or even a significant percentage of the run game like a guy like Deebo Samuel would be.
And as far as the Tyreek Hill thing, like McKenzie does not have the twitchiness, that a guy like Tyreek has off the line of scrimmage and in his route running. Like Aaron said, straight line speed is more his thing. And like you said, I mean, he has improved at his route running, but that twitchiness that Tyreek Hill has, I mean, in combination with that speed, you just don't see guys like that, that go unsigned in free agency and then come back to their old team, right? Like, so I think we need to be careful about some of these comparisons, like utilization wise. Sure, maybe you can think about utilization in some similar ways, but for people to be like, well, he's our combination of Tyreek and Deebo, like there's not a player on earth that's a combination of Tyreek and Deebo Samuel.
Yeah.
So
And I mean, and if you see Tyreek Hill play, like go search up some of the ways that Tyreek Hill runs a route and the way he finishes at the top of his route tree and the way that, he can deke out corners and safeties down the field. Like Tyreek Hill just has an element to his route running that Isaiah McKenzie just doesn't have. And a lot of that has to come with the fact that Tyreek Hill is pretty strong for his size and he's a pretty physical, aggressive player. So he can also get off the line of scrimmage a lot easier as well. Jason Taylor comes in and says Stevenson is faster. I don't disagree with that. I would say that Isaiah McKenzie is a more seasoned player. So
yep.
it was very rare this year that we saw Stevenson and McKenzie on the field at the same time. It was mostly because both of them were throwing up all over themselves in the punt return game. So, Isaiah McKenzie is a UFA. I wouldn't be surprised if Marquez Stevenson is a guy the Buffalo Bills are grooming to take on that Isaiah McKenzie role. But Isaiah McKenzie is a player who's been there, done that. He's battle tested. He's a veteran. He sees things that Marquez Stevenson doesn't see. He understands things that Marquez Stevenson doesn't understand because of the fact that he has been there and done that with this team year after year. He's the only receiver on this team that's been with Josh Allen since his rookie year. So 100% without a doubt, Isaiah McKenzie is going to play a role in this football game, and he is going to be a very good player in this football game, and he's going to make an impact on this football game. That just doesn't mean that he is some guy that we need to go out and give $100 million a soft season to, because he's some combination between Deebo Samuel and Isaiah McKenzie and Tyreek Hill.
I see what Randy's doing there.
Speaking of the running game,
That's
speaking
wrong,
of, we're not going to go there. We're not going to go there. But speaking of the running game, here's a take that I have on the running game, and I want to see if you have a similar take. I was watching that Green Bay game, and I'm not trying to compare the games last night because the weather was different, et cetera, but it just seemed like it was common sense for the Green Bay Packers that they could have ran the football more, and they just, for some reason, chose to kept trying to throw the football, despite the fact that being such a one trick pony, San Francisco was easily keying in on what they were doing, and they could cater their defense to only playing the pass. I would like to see the Buffalo offense maintain some semblance of balance today. I'm not saying it needs to be 50-50. I'm not saying we need to pound the rock. I'm not saying we need to make the running game a priority, but I would like to see Devin Singletary get those 6 to 7 touches, 7 to 8 touches in the first half, those 6 to 7 touches, those 7 to 8 touches in the second half. Get him to at least that 15 carry mark by the end of the football game. Again, I'm by no means saying the Buffalo Bills offense shouldn't play to its strengths, but I would like to see the Buffalo Bills show enough in the running game that they can keep the Kansas City defense honest. What are your thoughts on how we utilize Devin Singletary today?
Yeah, and I think this is probably one of the biggest differences between these teams from week 5, right? Is the Bills actually have a running game. And you made the comment, you're not saying the Bills shouldn't play to their strengths, but at this point, can we say the Bills have strengths in the running game and the passing? Like, they can run the ball from what we've seen the last 4 to 5 weeks. So I think that only helps you over the Bills, right? Like, putting 50, 60 pass attempts on Josh Allen, although he's your best player, isn't necessarily the recipe for success today, right? Like, you need to have a balanced attack against Kansas City. You need to have their defense guessing. You need to use that third dimension of Josh Allen running the ball, like we've said last week against the Pats. And you need to have a nice, somewhat balanced attack between the passing offense and then Josh Allen running plus traditional running game. And maybe that Josh Allen plus traditional running game gets you somewhere close to that, even balance. And even if it's not quite there, that you need to show that you're willing to do it, and you need to show some early success. I think early success doing it in this game, because it's going to be a long game, right? It's going to have this game's going to have a lot of ebbs and flows. There's going to be a lot of momentum shifts, I think, in this game. And the Bills need to stay grounded in this game, in the sense that not that they have to stay on the ground. I'm saying they have to weather storms. They have to weather momentum shifts. And the best way they can do that is by having this balanced attack on offense, showing that they can run and pass the ball effectively. Honestly, that to me is such a big part of this game, because Devin Singletary and this offensive line have really come into their own heading into this game. And this is something we didn't have in last year's game, and this is something we didn't have in week 5. So this is something the Chiefs haven't seen from us, even going back to week 6 last year. They haven't seen this from this Bills offense yet. So why not throw something at them that they haven't seen and make them prove that they can slow you down in that facet? So that's what I really hope they stick with it.
That game against the Chiefs in week 5 was very much dependent on the passing game, and Zach Moss. The running game was practically Josh Allen and Zach Moss catching dump offs. Like, that was the running game in week 5. And we made our bones by just getting out to a big lead, making these big plays down the field to guys like Dawson Knox and Emmanuel Sanders and Stephon Diggs. And we got out to a big lead and we held on to it. That was, and we got some really timely turnovers and a pick 6. Like, that is how we beat the Chiefs in week 5. This is a different football team. We're not going to beat them that way. That's not how you win in the playoffs. So you're spot on there. And Vincent comes in and says 10 catches for Diggs today. And that's one thing I want to talk about on the offense before we transition to the defense is Stephon Diggs. It seems like every week on this show that we have this conversation like, well, Stephon Diggs is our best receiver by a mile. The defenses are going to key on him. They're going to neutralize him. They're going to bracket him, et cetera, et cetera. We got to talk about what auxiliary weapon we need to defer to, or who needs to step up today because of all the attention that's going to be on Stephon Diggs. And then week after week, Stephon Diggs comes out and still has a big game. So does this narrative and this conversation that we seem to have week after week about like who's the guy who needs to step up when Stephon Diggs is double covered, does that need to go away? Like I feel like I need to accept that the Buffalo Bills have a top 3 to 5 quarterback wide receiver combo. We haven't had that since probably Andre Reed and Jim Kelly. And I just need to wake up to this fact that we need to stop talking about like, well, what happens if Stephon Diggs gets taken away? Because he's not going to get taken away.
If a guy like Kelvin Benjamin's your number one, then yeah, you got to worry about stuff like that. If a guy like Stephon Diggs is your number one, they find ways. Like that's why it was like baffling to me. If you go back to like the Eagles Bucks game, how long it took the Eagles to get Devontae Smith involved in that game until late. I guess what you started finding ways to get him the ball, and he was started making an impact. I don't want to hear, oh, we can't find ways to get him the ball. No, you can find ways to get him the ball. Number one wide receivers who are alpha top 10 receivers find ways to get the ball every week. Devontae Adams finds ways to get the ball every week. Look at the game yesterday between the Bengals and the Titans. Jamar Chase and A.J. Brown, both huge games yesterday for their teams, found ways to get the ball, found ways to make an impact on the game. So that narrative of like, oh, they're going to try to take Stephon Diggs away and this and that. Like when you have a guy of his caliber, you don't take him away. You try to limit him, sure. You try to limit his impact, his impactful plays, right? But you cannot fully take him away. And if you do somehow manage to, it's going to take you 2-3 guys to do it. And then that's where guys like Knox and Gabriel Davis and Sanders really should just have amazing, situations and matchups for them. But the narrative of Stephon Diggs, being taken away through double teams and all this and that, like when you have Josh Allen and you have Stephon Diggs, like there's really no way to take him completely out of the game. And by the way, this guy has got to be feeling extra motivated today.
Yeah.
The infamous picture of him standing on the field last year's game. This could be like if things break the Bills' way, this could end up being like a signature moment in Stephon Diggs' career, today's game, when we look back at his career. So,
and a guy who had the Minnesota Miracle who caught that
yeah,
ball.
exactly.
And that's what I'm talking about, just having that alpha type of dude. But Jason Taylor and PJ Ty come in to make great comments in the comment section. Jason Taylor comes in and says, might need to get the ball 8 to 10 different receivers. Kansas City won't know who to cover. PJ Ty comes in and says, you just shouldn't be targeting only him, is what I'm saying. And that's one of the things that you've talked about.
I don't disagree with that.
For weeks. Yeah. Is just Josh Allen's ability to get through his reads and process his reads and get through his progressions so quickly and buy time for himself and get the ball to Devin Singletary or Dawson Knox when dumping the football off. I look at these auxiliary weapons for the Buffalo Bills outside of Stephon Diggs. You have obviously Dawson Knox. You have sort of that veteran combo of Emmanuel Sanders, Cole Beasley. You have the red zone weapon and the big play down the field weapon in a guy like Gabriel Davis. You have a gadget guy like Isaiah McKenzie. What are your thoughts on some of these auxiliary weapons? Who do you think steps up today? Who do you think has a big game based on what you're seeing from this Kansas City defense?
I mean, I think the guy that would love to have a big game just based on who's on the opposite side of the field would be Dawson Knox, right? Dawson Knox went through, a low point going into this season and kind of came out of it and has really emerged as one of the top flight tight ends in this league. And ultimately, this game, people are going to be talking about Travis Kelce this, Travis Kelce that. Like, he's one of the best tight ends in the league and has done so for the last several years. But Dawson Knox, he can be in the conversation as one of the best tight ends in the league if he puts it together today and goes toe-to-toe with a guy like Travis Kelce on the other side of the field. And Dawson Knox has proven down the stretch of the season that he's been able to come up big in big situations, right? He had the first touchdown last week, obviously the back corner of the end zone. He had the other one on the bullet, and he almost had a third one last week, right? Renaissance Man says Knox has 16 TDs in the last 21 games. That man is going to put in work today. And I'd love to see Dawson Knox kind of maybe, I obviously love to see him score, but I'd also like to see him exert some of that physicality too today and get a little bit into the yak today, right? Make some guys feel the pain after the catch if he can, right? And I think that's one thing where Travis Kelce throughout his career has been so good at yards after the catch, and really the Chiefs in general So I like Knox. I think it's his moment. It's a moment for him to kind of step into the true spotlight. Bills fans obviously know what they've seen from him this year. He gets some talk in the national media from the likes of Kyle Brandt and others, but this is really a potential spotlight moment for Dawson Knox as well.
I mean, and there's just a number of ways. Obviously, Dawson Knox, week after week, I'm like, well, can he do it this week after he did it last week? And he just keeps delivering, as someone mentioned in the comment section, Renaissance Man mentioned 16 touchdowns in 21 games. He just keeps delivering. You have to think, after what happened last week and what happened in the Chiefs game, they are really going to be honing in on Dawson Knox, and he might just be as big of a priority as Stephon Diggs. So then I look around. I feel like this is a big game for Emmanuel Sanders today, mostly just because I've been ragging on the dude all season. Like, he's very laissez-faire in his press conferences, and I didn't think there was enough urgency from Emmanuel Sanders, and I was sort of all over him during the regular season because I didn't think there was that sense of urgency from Emmanuel Sanders that there were from other players on this roster. But like usual, he has a chance to make me look like a fucking idiot, right? Like, he has a chance to really make me
we'll take that.
look stupid for questioning him all season. So, Emmanuel, go make me look dumb today, dude. Go make me look like an idiot. He had a big game against the Chiefs last time. He caught a touchdown pass last week. This is a guy who might be coming on at the right time in Emmanuel Sanders.
And we know Cole Beasley and Diggs were hurt during that game last year. And although Beasley was a veteran presence and Diggs was obviously playing hurt, the one thing that was kind of missing from that mix in that room was we didn't have that other kind of vet who's been in a ton of playoff games and played in Super Bowls, right? Like, Emmanuel Sanders kind of fills that sort of intrinsic gap, if you will, of having that guy there who's played in these big games. Now, he's had his ups and downs as well this season, so hopefully he will rise to the occasion, realizes that he has made comments about, I'm just here to get my Super Bowl and then go sip drinks on a beach. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what he said.
It is.
Okay, well, then go out and do it and make an impact on this game, and we'll all be very happy. No Bills fan's going to care if you do that and ride off into the sunset if there's a Lombardi at the end of it for the Bills. So go right ahead and do that.
And it will be interesting to see as well, if Dawson Knox is the focus, who can take over the middle of the football field. If they key in on Dawson Knox, could it be Devin Singletary or Zach Moss in the dump off game? Could it be Cole Beasley if they go heavy zone? This could be a Cole Beasley game where Cole Beasley can just eat their zone alive. But if they decide to go man to man, it could be an Isaiah McKenzie game over the middle of the football field. So make sure that the Bills have options. Yeah, and that's and we're going to get to this when we talk about the Chiefs offense. What options do the Chiefs have if Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce are somewhat neutralized, and who's going to step up for them and have a big game for them if they want to get past this Buffalo Bills team? And then a couple more things before we transition over to the defense. Silas Whittle was in the comment section earlier. It's kind of faded away, but he was talking about, hey, the offensive line needs to have a big game, 100%. Right? John Feliciano got ragdolled in that AFC Championship game by Chris Jones. We can't have the same performance from Rick Bates. You had a guy in Melvin Ingram who torched Dawson Knox in week 1. Dawson Knox is, or not Dawson Knox, Deion Dawkins. I'm losing my mind here. Deion Dawkins, Deion Dawkins is going to be out looking for some vengeance. So the Buffalo Bills offensive line is going to need to be up to the task. Can you block for Josh Allen just enough for him to have success in the passing game? Can you block for us to have a balanced attack in the running game? You're going to need everything to come together. Dawkins, Brown, Williams, Morse, Tommy Doyle, and obviously Rick Bates. So obviously the offensive line, it's a given. Everything we just talked about is completely pointless if the Buffalo Bills offensive line shats the bed today. And PJ Ty comes in and says, this game is all about the trenches. 100% agree.
Absolutely.
Before we get to the defense, we got almost 300 people in here. We were over 300 for a second, and then we lost it. So if you're liking what you are seeing here, smash that like button, help us out with the old YouTube algorithm, and share this video cast with friends, family, maybe share it with a Chiefs fan, get them in here into the comment section. Let's get some people riled up. But share. We really appreciate it. We will be going all the way up until this Rams Buccaneers game starts. And then obviously the replay is available and of note all the way up until kickoff of the Bills and the Chiefs. So let's transition now to the Buffalo Bills defense versus this Kansas City Chiefs offense.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that I want to talk about, the first thing that I want to focus on is Trey White is out, right?
Yeah.
That is the biggest difference in our defense between week 5 in this game. Other than Matt Milano, Trey White is out. We were tested a little bit in that Tampa Bay game, but then either due to weather conditions or just the opponents, hasn't been that crazy big of a test for our corners since then. What do you think the Buffalo Bills do to try to neutralize Tyreek Hill? And I shouldn't even say neutralize, minimize Tyreek Hill. Do they go man-to-man aggressive? They were they ran a lot of man-to-man in week 5, despite the fact that they're not a man-to-man football team. Aggressive at the line of scrimmage, not giving them the free release. Or do you see the Buffalo Bills drop back into those 2 deep shells, into zones, try to keep everything in front of them? What approach do you think the Buffalo Bills take to try to minimize the impact of Tyreek Hill today?
Yeah, it's going to be tough, right? Because you can go back and you can look at the second half of that Tampa game or even the first half, right? Because all things considered, the Bills defense did a pretty good job in that game. Chris Godwin was getting open over the middle of the field all day during that game, but we also know that he doesn't have the speed of a Tyreek Hill. So this is where I feel a little bit concerned, or more concerned than I did maybe even against the Tampa Bay Bucks. You don't have anyone. There's no one in the NFL speed-wise that can take Tyreek Hill, one-on-one, right? I mean, just like teams will try. Fine. I think the safeties are going to have to play a big role. Yeah, well, I think the safeties are going to play a role. I do think you probably will see the Bills try to keep things in front of them. And like PJ said, tackling and not allowing yards after catch is going to be critical. The Kansas City Chiefs are the number 1 third down offense in the NFL. They're the only team converting over 50% of their third downs. The more you let them stay on the field, the more your defense gets tired out, the more you're going to get frustrated. The Bills, obviously, we know have one of the best third down defense. I think maybe the best third down defense in the NFL, but it's strength on strength. Best third down offense, best third down defense. The Bills have to tackle well. Make the Chiefs, put the Chiefs in third and longs, put the Chiefs in second and longs. We know the Chiefs are going to be going for it on fourth downs too, right? So you got to keep things in front of you. You've got to make sure you don't let them bust this thing open early. I think whatever you did against Tampa Bay, honestly, even though you gave up those points early, something similar, maybe with a little more safety help on Tyreek Hill. But my goodness, you cannot give up easy ones today to Tyreek Hill. Make them earn it every step of the way down the field and try to get pressure on Mahomes with the front four without blitzing. We know the Bills don't blitz Mahomes historically. And we know that blitzing Mahomes historically, whatever team it is not going to work. It does not work well.
Angus Khan comes in and says, what do you think about 2 DBs being brought up? I know our guy is Greg Tomsett. Aaron Quinn talked a little bit about they're just giving them sort of a just a reward, their name mentioned on the transaction wire, etc., for doing well in the in throughout the season, sort of just like a little pat on the back. But I wouldn't be surprised if maybe one of them plays today and a linebacker sits down. I wouldn't be shocked if one of that happens, because Jessica Tennis comes in and says play dime if Kansas City's passing game is going, it gets going. I wouldn't be surprised, and people might not want to hear this, but if you're playing like an aggressive man-to-man defense and you're putting a safety over the top to try to neutralize Tyreek Hill, well, then you have Travis Kelce, who's just going to eat for days in the middle of the football field.
Going to destroy you. Yeah.
And it seems like a weird thing to go back to, but I would go back to like the 2020 regular season game approach, the game that we lost. Make them run the football. Drop everybody back into coverage on almost every play. Drop everyone back. Trust your guys who are playing really well at the line of scrimmage, and Jerry Hughes and Mario Addison and Gregory Rousseau and Boogie Basham, and those guys on the interior, Ed Oliver and Harrison Phillips and Star Lotulelei. Trust those guys up front and make Kansas City have to run the football on you. Make them have to dink and dunk, make them have to run the football, make them have to sustain drives, make Patrick Mahomes get so infuriated dinking and dunking that he tries to toss one down the field that he shouldn't toss one down the field, and force a turnover. So if I'm the Buffalo Bills, I'm just dropping everybody back into zone. I'm using my big linebackers like Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano to just try to wreak some havoc. And I'm trusting my front four to get to, and even if they can't sack Patrick Mahomes, to disrupt Patrick Mahomes. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just keeping everything in front of me today. I'm not being super aggressive at the line of scrimmage and playing that man-to-man defense. I'm just not.
And one thing the Bills do need to be a little bit worried about, and we go back to that Carolina game where Cam Newton really did have a pretty good day running the ball against us. Even guys like Matt Ryan, Tom Brady in the Bucs game had a few runs. Mac Jones, a few frustrating runs early in the playoff game last week. Mahomes is going to run the ball. So pressure with the front four is great if you don't get to him, but you also need to somehow find a way, like the Chiefs are likely going to try to do to Josh Allen, to avoid Patrick Mahomes beating you with his legs as well. Now, I think if the Bills are going heavy zone, that should help, right? They'll have their eyes sort of in front of them, and they should be able to kind of close on that. But Patrick Mahomes on broken plays as well. We know that he destroys teams on broken plays with his legs and with his arms. So guys like Edmonds and Milano in limiting Patrick Mahomes on broken plays, as far as him running the ball, is also going to be key. So I think your point about them staying in zone, that's a must, right? Because the second those backs get turned, you're done, right? And that's where Josh Allen's had his success running on a lot of situations, and Patrick Mahomes can do the same thing. Randy says this season on RPOs, Bills have thrown it 3-1 versus running. What do you think the chances are that Dable Josh go against tendency, trying to be unpredictable?
I think this is the day where we break tendencies in a ton of in a ton of manners. We just talked about breaking a tendency on defense. We showed them in the regular season a ton of physical, aggressive line of scrimmage, man-to-man defense. Now possibly switching over to a contained style defense. So likewise on offense, you're right. If you have a tendency to do something like passing the ball in an RPO, switch that tendency to running the football, or at least do it in the first half, right? So then in the second half, you can maybe have more effectiveness passing the ball in the second half. So I think you're spot on here. That's where coaching plays such a huge role in this game, and the thought that goes into the philosophy behind this football game and how the coaching staff prepares the players. Obviously, the players have to go out in the field and execute, but it's the coaching staff that can put these players on an advantage by, hey, we've been doing things one way all season. We're going to switch it up in the playoffs to break that tendency. So I think you're spot on there, Randy, that we're going to see some form of tendency breaking from the Buffalo Bills in this football game to throw the Kansas City Chiefs for a loop. So it'll be interesting to see how the Kansas City, what tendencies we decide to break, how that affects the Kansas City Chiefs, and whether those tendencies continue after halftime, how the Chiefs try to adjust after halftime, and whether we go back to what we used to do to sort of, get them off balance and get them thinking about things. So I think you're spot on there, Randy. That's one thing the Buffalo Bills can do today to gain an advantage, is play some head games with those Kansas City Chiefs.
This is, like Greg said, leave it all on the field, and leave it all on the field with what's in your coaching arsenal as well, right? So bringing things into play that you haven't brought into play before, like the creativity has to be empty today. I know it's not the AFC Championship game, but you can go back to the drawing board after this week if you somehow win and figure out what to do against the Bengals.
You lose, your season's over.
Yeah, exactly. You have
get to next week.
You have to empty it, and we know that this has been bubbling for almost a year at this point in that building. So the one thing you cannot do, like we said at the top, is, this has been bubbling for a year. You've waited for this moment, if you're the Bills, to get your revenge, so to speak. You cannot come out scared, and you cannot lay an egg from a coaching standpoint, from an execution standpoint. If the Bills go down and they go down swinging and they execute well, and it just is like one of those all-timers and they lose, it's going to suck, but it's going to be a lot easier pill to swallow than if we feel like they turtle shelled and kind of backed down from the Chiefs.
Yeah, 100%. And, looking at this game too, I'm thinking that I think the Buffalo Bills are going to have a solid game plan for minimizing Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. Are they going to get theirs? Yeah, sure. They're going to get theirs. Travis Kelce's probably going to catch a touchdown. Tyreek Hill's probably going to get, his yards, etc. That's all going to happen at some point in this game. But I think you're not going to see, Kelce break out for like the game he did against the Chargers, or Tyreek Hill break out from those huge fantasy days. I think the Buffalo Bills will do a relatively decent job containing those guys. So if the Chiefs are really going to get a leg up on offense, I think they need one of these auxiliary weapons to step up. Jerick McKinnon. It looks like Clyde Edwards-Helaire could be active today. Obviously, Byron Pringle, guys like Demarcus Robinson. Who do you think is the player that steps up for the Kansas City Chiefs today and maybe makes some plays that could throw the Buffalo Bills for a loop?
Oh man, I mean Byron Pringle is a size guy, kind of like a sizey guy. I think he's a little bit underrated.
Mm-hmm.
I think the one guy we really haven't mentioned is Mecole Hardman, right? He's a guy that has speed. If you're focused on Tyreek Hill, Mecole Hardman can burn you for some big plays. He's like, I would say Mecole Hardman is probably more along the lines of an Isaiah McKenzie type than Tyreek Hill. Mecole Hardman's a guy I would worry about. And if Dane Jackson's kind of matched up with him or whoever it is, as far as ancillary pieces outside of Hill and Kelsey, he's a guy that would keep me up at night if I'm the Bills coaching staff because he doesn't need a lot of volume to make an impact. Like 2-3 plays, he can make a big impact on this game. So that's a guy I think we hadn't mentioned yet, but he would be a guy
Yeah.
I'd be worried about.
Jessica Tennis asked a question earlier. She said, what are your predictions for the inactive list? My prediction for the inactive list would be probably something similar to last week. Marquez Stevenson was inactive. Matt Breida was inactive. Joe Giles-Harris and Eli Anku, the two practice squad call-ups, were inactive. Bobby Hart, Tommy Sweeney, F.A. Obata. I think that Boogie Basham has surpassed F.A. Obata. I think that stays the same. I think Marquez Stevenson just doesn't have a spot on this roster with Hyde returning kicks and McKenzie being part of the running game. Matt Breida, I think they just don't want to sacrifice a special teams player for a guy who's just not going to get on the field for more than 1 or 2 targets. And obviously Bobby Hart is the extra offensive lineman. Tommy Sweeney, you want to utilize Tommy Doyle in that role, etc. If I look at the only changes I think I could make, Nick McLeod and Josh Thomas getting called up. Maybe they think Josh Thomas is a better pass defender than Jaquan Johnson. So like Josh Thompson plays today. Maybe they think Nick McLeod, they want to go extra dime. So they pull out like a Tyrell Dodson for this game and they implement either the extra safety or the extra corner. Maybe they don't want to make the roster transaction now, but Cam Lewis has fallen out of favor and Nick McLeod has, sort of bevied some favor with the team. So they want to have Nick McLeod active instead of Cam Lewis. So when I look at this team, I think you're going to see the exact same roster as last week, minus maybe a Nick McLeod slips in there for a linebacker or for maybe a DB at the bottom half of the roster that they've like lost favor with and just don't want to make that swap with yet, like in terms of 53-man roster. Dave Tran comes in and says, isn't McLeod really fast? Yes. I don't know if that plays a role. Maybe that plays a role if they if they want to go dime and they want that extra DB, but do you really think a UDFA out of Notre Dame who's never taken a snap in the National Football League, maybe he got a snap with Cincinnati, I don't know. I can't think so. Do we really think that they're going to match that dude up mano with Tyreek Hill?
Well, these guys ideally, I mean, they're probably not going to play, right? So it's like, are you going to sacrifice your special teams for one of these guys who hasn't played like a down or rarely has played any downs at all? Like, it will be very surprising to me if the inactives list wasn't pretty much exactly the same as it was last week. It'd be very surprising.
Yeah, and then Alan T says they could match him up with Pringle. That's a good point, but like
again,
Levi or Dane can keep up with Pringle. Yeah. Maybe Mecole Hardman or Demarcus Robinson, but I don't think so. Like I just don't see a guy who's never played a snap in the National Football League, was a UDFA, coming in and playing a significant role in this football game. But hey, when we get to the wild card bitches player of the game, feel free to throw Nick McLeod in there anyway in the comment section. But my last thing here about the Chiefs offense that scares me the most is it's obviously, and we like to have fun with this all the time. When Josh Allen does something, we always like to make fun of the fact that only Patrick Mahomes gets credit for doing these things. But that also shouldn't take the credit away from Patrick Mahomes, who is a guy who can extend plays, who is a guy who can make things happen when the play breaks down. My biggest fear in this game is our defense is going to do everything right. The coverage is going to be perfect. The pass rush is going to be decent. And Patrick Mahomes is just going to slip away from a guy. He's going to roll out and something's going to break down and the big play is going to be there. And once the catch is made by either Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill, the skill set is going to be there to house one, to make that big play. Even guys like Jerick McKinnon underneath have the ability to do this. My biggest fear of this game is the Buffalo Bills defense does everything right, but Patrick Mahomes slips away and things break down, and that's how big plays occur. We can only have that happen once, twice. We can't have that happen a number of times in this football game.
Agreed. And that gets back to my point I made earlier about some of these quarterbacks who are freaking statues being able to scramble out and make a few plays. Mac Jones, Matt Ryan, Tom Brady, to name a few in these, games down the stretch. That scares me. The Bills, the middle of the field could be open for some of these situations.
Mhm.
And this game is going to be a lot about momentum. Those are big momentum type plays that really could be backbreakers if they're on like 3rd and longs, like we saw last week. Thankfully, Micah Hyde kind of closed the door on that with that pick. But those are really tough to swallow when you're a good 3rd down defense and you have a team in 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12, and the quarterback scrambles for a first down.
Mhm.
It is really frustrating. It is really demoralizing, at least for me watching. And those are the types of things where every 3rd down really is going to matter. You got to get off the field when you can. And we know Patrick Mahomes, he's going to make plays. Like, it's just going to happen. He's an MVP. He's a Super Bowl champion. It's going to happen. Right. And this is the show, man. Josh Allen, Pat Mahomes, Chiefs built, like, it's going to happen, man. It's for, if you're expecting the Bills to completely shut down the Chiefs, I would caution your expectations.
I would. Yeah, temper your expectations there. Jason comes in and says, we're going to talk about how much Matt Hawk sucks and could easily give them a special teams advantage. We actually led the show with this. So when this thing is all said and done with, you can rewind it back to the top of the show where we talked about how we want the Buffalo Bills to be aggressive today. Touchdown or field goals aren't going to win you this game. You need touchdowns once you get past the 50-yard line. Once you get past, when you get into these 4th and short situations, we want aggressive Sean McDermott today, and we want Sean McDermott to set a tone. We want the Buffalo Bills to do every single thing they can to keep Matt Hawk off the football field in punting situations for sure. But if, hey, it's all right, Jason. He says he only came in through halfway through. But hey, if they do get in that situation, just cross your fingers and pray. That's pretty much all you can do. And that's pretty much, I think, all the Buffalo Bills can do in this situation with the fact that Matt Hawk just seems like, he likes to pump fake his punts for some reason. Like he's in the NBA, like he thinks that's going to work, and he holds on to punts and he overthinks punts and he shanks punts. And that was his MO, but we signed him because he is good at holding a football. So it's just something that we as Bills fans are going to have to live with. And we just got to cross our fingers and hope that Matt Hawk is lucky today and that he actually punts well if he's asked to punt, or at least doesn't punt embarrassingly bad.
Yes.
That would work as well. All right. Half hour until kickoff of Rams Buccaneers. So let's get at it. Let's get into the pregame, the divisional round, Bills Chiefs game superlatives. Let's start with the Take Me Higher player of the game. And remember, while we're giving our predictions for all of these various different superlatives, we want you guys in the comment section telling us who you think the player who deserves this superlative is as well. And we will share some of those comments. So I'm going to start with you, Dave, and then we're going to go to the comment section. Who is your Take Me Higher player of the game today?
Yeah, and just for those who this is the first time watching, we are not allowed to pick Josh Allen.
No Josh
That
Allen.
was a rule we established because it was pretty much going to be him every time. So we said cannot pick him. That's obvious. And I've been going with Stephon Diggs a lot lately, and I'm gonna actually lump him into with Josh Allen too. Though I'm gonna put them as a tandem. I'm just gonna say them as a tandem. You can't pick them. Tremaine Edmonds is my Take Me Higher player for today. The much maligned, if you will, across Bills media, Bills social, or Bills content creators. Tremaine Edmonds is a polarizing figure for Bills fans. There are the faction who really think he's played pretty well, and has done, everything kind of that has been expected of a player of his age. And there are people who feel like he's overrated and really hasn't shown up in big moments and in big games, undisciplined in filling his gaps and so on and so forth. Tremaine Edmonds is going to be very crucial to the success of the Bills defense today, not just in kind of coverage, right? Covering Kelsey when he has to and covering the middle of the field, but in the run game too, right? Because if the Bills do decide that they want to maybe try to force the Chiefs to try to run the ball, give them looks where the Chiefs are tempted to run. Tremaine Edmonds has to be disciplined. He has to be flowing sideline to sideline, and he has to be key in the run game. So Tremaine Edmonds has to do it all today. He has to be valuable in the passing game. He has to be stout in the run game, and it's a chance for him to put a notch in his belt in the sense of quieting down a few more of the haters that are out there in kind of showing that he is capable starting middle linebacker in this league, an above average to elite middle linebacker in this league. He has to be huge today.
Spin 0481, he agrees with you, says Edmonds needs to shut down the middle of the field like he did in week 5. Tiny Van Liven says Knox for take me higher. Jason M says Ed Oliver is his take me higher. Let me scroll through here, see if we've got anything else. Milano, Knox, Singletary, Milano, Singletary or Sanders. So we got a bunch. Motor, Jordan Poyer coming in as well. Can't imagine a win, says Jason, without Levi Wallace playing at his absolute peak.
Aaron Quinn would be appreciative of that one.
Jessica Tennis coming in saying the impact that Isaiah McKenzie has on the game between returning kicks, rushing, and catching passes. So a whole bunch. Aaron Quinn also says Singletary, also Knox. Brendan Bean specifically called out the tight end position and Dawson Knox at the end of the year presser last year. So the revenge tour, on full display there. Autumn RE comes in and says Gabriel Davis. Alan T says Teron Johnson. I like this one from Brendan P. He says Groot. He came up big in the last game. Dane Jackson as well. So a whole bunch here. Apologies if I missed one. Green Beans comes in and says Rick Bates. I am going to go with, I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to go with 10 players. I'm going to go with the offensive and defensive line, right? Like we've talked this entire show about the secondary, and we've talked this entire show about the wide receivers, et cetera, et cetera. The Buffalo Bills are not going to win this football game playing like they did week 5 against the Kansas City Chiefs. Their offensive line wasn't good in that football game. They made some big plays down the field. They had some timely turnovers. They scored points off of turnovers. They got out to a big lead and they held it. That's not going to happen in this football game. It is the playoffs. You are in Kansas City. It is January. They have been there before and they have done this. If you are going to win this football game, you are going to have to do so at the line of scrimmage. So whether it is Rick Bates up against Chris Jones, whether it is Deion Dawkins up against Melvin Ingram, whether it's Mitch Morse on these pin and pulls or Spencer Brown buying Josh Allen just a little bit more time when he rolls out of the pocket. Reggie Gilliam, Roman Bobek comes in and says, Tommy Doyle, Dawson Knox, the wide receivers in the blocking game. The Buffalo Bills have to be aggressive at the line of scrimmage on both offense and defense. They got to disrupt Patrick Mahomes, and they got to be able to establish their dominance at both line of scrimmages in order to win this football game. All the skill position players in the world won't save either of these teams. The team that plays better at the line of scrimmage on both sides of the football game will win this football game. So my take me higher player of the game, anyone for the Buffalo Bills who lines up on the offensive or defensive line today, give me the big fatties. I'm going with them as my take me higher player of the game. And that leads us, ladies and gentlemen, into our wild card player of the game.
Wild card, bitches!
All right, so we already got Dan Van Kay coming in, and Roman Bobek started this whole thing by mentioning Reggie Gilliam. Dan Van Kay comes in and says, I have a weird feeling Reggie Gilliam might score a touchdown tonight. So people in the comment section, who is the surprise player who's going to show up in this game? Maybe make a, I'm not going to say dominate the game like Isaiah McKenzie did against the Patriots, but who's going to make a play in this game that maybe shapes the way this football game goes in favor of the Buffalo Bills? We'll start with you, Dave, and let's see what we got in the comment section outside of Reggie Gilliam. Who is your wild card player of the game?
Oh man, I almost wanted to go Tommy Doyle, but I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna do that. I think it's gonna be Levi Wallace. He's my wild card player of the game. He's another one of those guys like Tremaine Edmonds who seems to be split as far as like how people view him in the Bills kind of content creation community, Bills media, and so forth. But without Trey White there going up against the big bad Chiefs, Levi Wallace has to do his best Trey White impression today and play a really solid game, right? Because we know Poyer, we know Hyde are back there, the veteran leaders, they're all pro duo, whatever. But on the outside, Levi Wallace is going to have to hold his own. He had the nice pick off the tip ball last week. And I think that I think he could be a guy that comes up with an interception today on a play where maybe Patrick Mahomes gets a little loose with the ball. So I'm like Levi Wallace. I think that he does get he's under heralded and underappreciated. So give me Levi Wallace as the wild card player of the game today.
We've got a ton of them coming in. I like the Star Latulele one because I think maybe he was starting to find his peak a little bit last game. The Saran Neal one was pretty solid. Maybe he makes a play as a gunner, like forces a fumble or something, a team's play that comes into account. And then Spin 0481, he predicted yours and he predicted mine as well. Spin 0481 comes in and says Basham, his motor will get him another sack. I think that's by saying this, he's probably going to end up being inactivated by the time the game starts. But I do think that Boogie Basham is finally rounding into form. I think he's finally hitting his stride. Maybe didn't hit that rookie wall because he was inactive so much early on in the season. And I think he's really starting to develop. And I know he doesn't play a huge role, and I know he's not the biggest part of the rotation, but I can envision a play this week where Boogie Basham gets to Patrick Mahomes, or Boogie Basham forces Patrick Mahomes out of the pocket, or Boogie Basham clouds the pocket on a play that leads to a turnover or leads to a significant loss or leads to a significant third down stop. So I'm going to be looking for Boogie Basham today to just do something. I'm not saying it's going to be some big, like tipped interception like Gregory Rousseau or some forced fumble, but I think Boogie Basham is going to have an impact on this football game. And I really like what I've been seeing from him the last couple of weeks. All right. That leads us now to the player on the Kansas City Chiefs that the Buffalo Bills have to respect if they are going to win this football game.
I pure, straight hate you. But God damn it, do I respect you.
All right, so let us know in the comment section who's the player that has you sort of scared the most. We've already got ZZ coming in and saying Chris Kelsey. I was thrown off there because Richard Rush said Kelsey. Travis Kelsey already coming in saying it. Jason coming in saying Travis Kelsey as well. I think we can all agree. That Patrick Mahomes should not be mentioned in this segment, just like Josh Allen is not mentioned in this segment. We got Chris Jones coming in as well as a very popular one in the comment section. Who fears you the most? There's a lot to choose from here, and that's why the Kansas City Chiefs are in this game.
Yep. I mean, if you want to say the Mount Rushmore of respect for the Chiefs, it's going to be Mahomes, Kelsey Hill, and Chris Jones. So I'm going to go another direction. I'm going to say, and I'm going to kind of bend the rules a little bit here, like you did with the Take Me Higher. I'm going to say Steve Spagnuolo because he's coached in a lot of playoff games. He's coached Super Bowl winning defenses, we know, with the Giants, with the Chiefs. He always seems to have some new little wrinkle, some kind of scheme, some kind of added thing that he throws into these games. And he had the Bills number last year in that AFC Championship game. And Steve Spagnuolo maybe is a guy that, obviously isn't getting run for head coaching jobs, but he has done a nice job with that Chiefs defense. And in big games, they seem to show up when they need to. So I think the Bills need to respect really Steve Spagnuolo and what the Chiefs could potentially do to them on defense. And it goes back to like, how is this game going to be officiated early? Or is Spags going to go out there and say, hey, let's see what we can get away with early, right? That's him coaching his guys to do that. So my guy that you got to respect really is really the Chiefs defense by way of Steve Spagnuolo.
We've got a Chiefs fan in the comment section coming in saying, as a Chiefs fan, you'll need to look out for Nick Bolton, one of our favorites in the pre-draft process. He's developed into a damn good linebacker. Him, and I know he was arrested this week for beating up a vacuum, but Willie Gay is an athletic linebacker that they're going to send someone to spy on Josh Allen in this game. I feel like maybe one of the things that Steve Spagnuolo has cooking up as a spy, it's going to be really interesting to see who he uses to spy. Is it Tyrann Mathieu? Is it Nick Bolton? Is it Willie Gay? They need someone. Yeah. Michael D comes in and says Gay spying on Allen and laying the wood. That's one thing that you're going to, want to keep an eye on. So for me, obviously, you look at this defense. If Chris Jones and Melvin Ingram and Frank Clark get going, you're in trouble. Josh Allen has got to consistently be aware of Tyrann Mathieu. I'm going to cop it out. I'm going to go with the two offensive weapons, Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, just because they play so perfectly off one another. You try to take Travis Kelce away over the middle, you free up Tyreek Hill on the boundary. You try to take away Tyreek Hill on the boundary, you free up Travis Kelce in the middle. So they play off of one another, and that's what makes it so difficult to shut down the Kansas City offense, is the fact that you shut down one, the other has a big game, you try to adjust, and the other guy, goes off. So it's just this constant back and forth because they both dominate such different parts of the football field.
Yep.
So that's definitely what I'm going to look out for in this game. All right, ladies and gentlemen, get ready. It's time for your hottest takes in this football game.
Oh my God! We're having a fire sale! Oh, the burning! It burns me! Evacuate all the school children! Oh, mate! This isn't a fever! Sing, Gray! Can't even see where the knob is!
All right, so we've already got C. Patel. I don't know if this is his hot take, but he likes Milano going up against Travis Kelce. What is your hottest take in this football game?
Matt Hawk, no punts. No punts today for the Bills.
Oh, that is
Nope.
spicy. That is spicy.
I mean, we're laying it out of everything on the field, right? I'm laying it on the field too.
Ooh,
No punts for the Bills today.
Brendan
That's
P says
my hot
Jackson
take.
Mahomes going to catch hands today. I wouldn't mind somebody accidentally, getting pushed off the football field and Jackson Mahomes. That wouldn't ruin my day.
Now, I have some logic to that take.
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah.
Look,
Go boys, share your logic.
The Bills are going to be aggressive all day, right? I think they're going to be finding themselves in situations where they have no choice but to go for it on fourth downs. And I don't really see a situation where, unless for some reason the Chiefs end up punting in a weird situation around midfield and pin the Bills deep at their own 5-10 yard line, which I don't see the Chiefs doing, right? The Chiefs are around midfield. I don't think they're going to punt. So really, the only time I think either one of these teams is going to punt is if they're really maybe inside their own 40, inside their own 35, and it's a really long fourth down. So I'm trusting the Bills offense. I love the momentum they have right now in all three phases with Josh Allen running, traditional running, and passing. Hot take, no Matt Hawk punts today for the Bills.
We got Michael Katarski coming in saying his hot take is the Bills blow them out. Jason M says Mahomes at least 2 interceptions. Spin comes in and says Dane Jackson pick 6. Mine I'm going with, I changed mine. And I went with Devin Singletary, 100 plus rushing yards, not all purpose yards.
That's a
100 plus rushing yards and 2 touchdowns for Devin Singletary today. And I just feel like this team is different. I have a different feeling about this Buffalo Bills football team. I'm breaking superstition. I'm wearing that Stevie Johnson jersey today because I'm ready for these curses to be broken. I'm ready for this team to overcome all of these different superstitions. I'm ready to be hurt, but it will be worth it because I'm feeling confident in this football team. And you look at all the narratives coming into this game. Oh, the Chiefs went out this offseason and fixed their biggest problem, the line of scrimmage. They're really good at the line of scrimmage. They fixed their offensive line. Oh, the Chiefs went out and they tried to draft Clyde Edwards-Helaire when people were ripping them for not having a running game. I think at the end of the day, the Buffalo Bills offensive line is going to outplay the Kansas City Chiefs offensive line today. I think the Bills' third-round running back, Devin Singletary, is going to outplay whatever running back the Kansas City Chiefs try to throw out there. I think the Bills, as Randy said, are going to try to throw some curveballs at the Kansas City Chiefs today. And I think one of the curveballs they are going to throw at them is this game is not going to be all about Josh Allen. That's the talk. Every day, every single broadcaster, every single person on ESPN radio that I've had to hear this week. Well, that offense is Josh Allen. So if Josh Allen has a bad day, they have no chance. I don't even know. I'm not going to sit here and predict that Josh Allen has a bad day, but I'm going to sit here and predict that they're not going to rest the entire season and this game completely and squarely on Josh Allen's shoulders today. I think there will be a balanced approach. I think there will be a balanced effort. Like I said, they can't beat this team the way they beat them in week 5. They are going to pivot, and they will pivot to the running game. The wide receivers will be blocking. Mitch Morse will be pinning and pulling. Rick Bates will make a difference. The tackles will be motivated. This team will get it done, not just through the air, but they will get through to them on the ground. And I think that Devin Singletary goes for 100 plus and 2 touchdowns today. Randy throwing a real curveball here and says it'll be Zach Moss leading the team in carries. That would shooketh me. And I would barring injury, I would really disagree with that type of pivot from the Buffalo Bills. And that leads us, ladies and gentlemen, we're here. We are here. It is our AFC divisional round game prediction.
Back to the future. Back to the future.
Back to the future. Back to the future. Back to the future. Back to the future.
All right. So, ladies and gents, hit us up with your prediction in the comment section. And Dave, paint a picture for us. What are we going to see today?
I think both teams are going to come out offensively and be in rhythm. I think this is going to shape up as one of those games you look back on and say it's one of the better games in the playoffs, maybe one of the better games in the last 5-6 years. And the only knock you'll have on this game that it was just in the divisional round and it wasn't in a bigger moment like the AFC Championship game or otherwise. I think that it won't necessarily be akin to that Rams Chiefs game from a few years ago on Monday Night Football, where it was like crazy, just like teams exchanging tutties like left and right. But I do think that both offenses today get the better of their defensive counterparts. I think the Bills do enough. I think the Bills' aggression with my McDermott shirt on, McDermott having the coaching game of his life today, McDermott's best coach game of his career today, and the Bills will win at the end of the day, 38-34.
That would be that's an all-time classic score right there. When you got some scores coming in here as I'm displaying them. 45-41 or 45-41 Chiefs says Darth Faded. 41-21 Bills says Brendan P. Jose Colon says 42-34. Ariel Grande coming in saying 34-31 Chiefs. 33-27 Chiefs. But I like what Lester P has to say here. He says, "Eye of the Tiger. This team has an edge. Rocky lost to Clubber Lang. Next meeting, Rocky emerged victorious. Go Bills." That's where my head is at. I took a lot of flack because I picked the Kansas City Chiefs to win Week 5. Got a lot of flack for that. That will not happen again. Listen. This is a football team in the Buffalo Bills that are different. They are battle tested. They have been through adversity, and I think that they are now better positioned mentally to be successful in this football game. They feel disrespected. They feel slept on. They feel overlooked. I'm not saying they are disrespected. I'm not saying they are slept on. I'm not saying they are being overlooked, because I've seen enough national media people sing the praises of the Buffalo Bills and pick the Buffalo Bills this week. But like Baker Mayfield, this Buffalo Bills locker room has convinced themselves that every single fucking person on this planet is out to get them and disrespects them. Deion Dawkins this week said, "Hey, fuck everybody. Like, no disrespect. Fuck everybody." This is a team that has literally convinced itself that everyone is out to get them. And that is a dangerous, dangerous mindset that they are going to be carrying with them into this football game. They are built different than they were last year. They had to overcome more adversity. They had to face more challenges, and they have overcome it to get to this point. They are now mentally tough enough to overcome the hurdle of the Kansas City Chiefs in the postseason. I think it's a back and forth football game. I think the Bills get up 7 late, and then the defense keeps the Chiefs from tying the football game. 34-27 Buffalo is my prediction here.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of people are predicting fairly close games, which, I respect the Chiefs fans in here too, showing, look, like we said, this could be a coin flip game. Like Chiefs predicting, a lot of Chiefs fans predicting a win by less than a touchdown, a lot of Bills fans predicting a win by less than a touchdown. And like revenge narrative, again, we see it from the Bills side. It makes sense. We're trying to get revenge from that AFC Championship game, but the Chiefs are also playing that card to an extent as well, saying, "Hey, like we're trying to get revenge for Week 5, and you guys beat us in Week 5 in our own building." So, like both teams are drumming up this narrative that everyone's against them. Now, unfortunately for the Chiefs, everyone's still for the most part, favors Patrick Mahomes and that team. So it works better for the Bills in that regard. And the Bills tend to play their best when they are backed up against the wall and feeling like everyone is against them. So let's see if that plays out today. And this other game's about to start.
All right.
So
And that,
we timed this out pretty well, I would say.
That will do it for us, ladies and gentlemen. Listen, if you happen to be watching this show on replay, so you're not watching it live, you're watching it, maybe watching the football game, Rams-Bucks, maybe Rams-Bucks turns into a blowout, and you're watching this pregame show or listening to this pregame show, before kickoff, not live, on demand, put a comment in the comment section. I will do my best to be checking my phone during the game, responding to any comments, questions, topics you guys want to talk about. So hit up that comment section below. Share this with anyone you think might be interested in listening to it before the game. And hey, hopefully this won't be our last of the season. But until next time, Dave, go Bills.
Go Bills.